Rudy Giuliani filed for bankruptcy yesterday, days after a jury ordered him to pay $148 million to two former Georgia election workers whom Giuliani accused of committing fraud in 2020, per The Hill. Giuliani's filings list between $1 million and $10 million in assets and between $100 million and $500 million in liabilities.
Here's Giuliani yesterday speaking out after the filing.
I said I've got to protect myself, and I've got to, in essence, protect other people, normal creditors who have normal amounts that are owed, because they'd all be wiped out. And they'd be wiped out before we even got to an appeal. How
do they even get to?
I mean, go into bankruptcy. If you take away that judgment, I'm actually a pretty fortunate guy. I've got a decent amount of money. I'm not bankrupt, but with 148 million, I'm destroyed.
Joining us now to weigh in is Hill White House columnist Niall Stanage. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good to be with you, Robbie.
So tell us about this move. This is Giuliani. This makes tactical sense for him to not have to actually pay this extreme amount of money that he owes to the Georgia election clerks?
I suppose it does. I mean, it's the only way out for him, given that he doesn't have $148 million lying around. But, obviously other people would say, well, he should have thought about that before he defamed these two women in pretty egregious terms. Two women who were, otherwise anonymous citizens who were doing their duty as election workers.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but he's gone back and forth on this, because initially he said what he said about them was true. Mm-hmm. Then he said, well, it wasn't true, but it was just free speech. It wasn't defamatory. Then his attorneys, I think, conceded, well, it was defamatory, but the amount of money they're requesting is outrageous. Then he more recently went back and again said, no, it is all true, and I shouldn't face this persecution.
Right, and just to complete the circle there, those comments that he made where he did suggest these claims were true have themselves elicited the suggestion that the two women involved are going to turn around and sue him again for defamation because he repeated the false claims.
And this was Trump's attorney.
I know, it's not a great sign. This is Four Seasons landscaping all over again, except in defamation terms.
What do you make of this, Jessica?
I find it fascinating that Giuliani has said he wants to protect the good creditors where there's a reasonable amount of money owed. Filing for a bankruptcy would put an automatic stay on any debts owed. I'm not sure what creditors he's protecting by filing for bankruptcy. Is he talking about, the $1 million owed in back taxes to the IRS? Does he identify the IRS as a good creditor? I don't know what to make of that. If he was really worried about those creditors so much, he could pay off those debts before filing for bankruptcy. But anyway, I think it's fascinating because you have the election workers' lawyer saying that the maneuver's unsurprising and it will not succeed in discharging Mr. Giuliani's debt to Ruby Freeman and Shay Moss. Do you see a judge assigning some sort of appeal where they try and garner Giuliani's assets? What do you see moving forward for that attorney there, if anything, Niall?
I think in general terms, Jessica, it is not something that the courts look kindly upon, where someone receives an adverse ruling or a demand for costs or damages and then instantly turns around and suggests that they're bankrupt as a way to avoid paying those costs. Not to compare Rudy Giuliani with Alex Jones, at least too closely, but I mean, Alex Jones, as I understand it, is now negotiating with the Sandy Hook families as to exactly how he may begin making some dent in the amount of money that he was ordered to pay them. So it's obviously a complicated legal process, but as a general matter, you can't just receive an adverse ruling and then say, well, I'm bankrupt, so that's just tough.
Wasn't Giuliani formerly upset at Trump for not paying him on time, paying his legal fees?
He was, and there was also some suggestion, Robbie, that Trump could somehow come to his aid in fundraising terms. Perhaps not such a surprise.
Trump doesn't even come to the aid in fundraising terms of the candidates, right?
No,
he didn't help out the Blake Masters and Georgia, Nevada, et cetera. There were a lot of complaints about that.
Exactly. I mean, loyalty tends to be a one-way street with the former president. That's one of the few things that seems to be a bipartisan consensus around him, that he expects loyalty toward him, which Rudy Giuliani showed in a way that I think incinerated Giuliani's own credibility. But when the bill came due for Rudy, the former president, wasn't very obvious.
Do Do you think
So it sounds
Giuliani?
like
Go ahead, Jessica.
Sounds like the judge is a little bit suspicious of this maneuver from Giuliani as well, preemptively, talking about his failure to satisfy more modest monetary awards entered earlier in this case provides good cause to believe that he's going to seek to dissipate or conceal his assets within a 30-day period. Could we see Giuliani doing this? I guess that's what you alluded to with Alex Jones a bit, but could we see him facing financial crime charges as well?
I am not frankly sure of the answer to that. I don't think that those sort of avoidances constitute a criminal tax or financial offence. But certainly it's not something that the court is likely to look kindly upon if they believe that you're simply trying to wriggle out of these things. You alluded a moment or two ago, Jessica, to the issue of how Giuliani had sort of claimed that he's really trying to protect the good creditors. Excuses like that seem just so implausible.
It is a massive amount of money, 146 million, right, as he explained in that clip. He has money, but no one has 146. A couple people do, but
sure.
most people, even well-off people, don't have 148 million lying around. The way damages get assigned in these cases is very interesting. Obviously, look, I agree that what he said about the election workers was false and was damaging to them, and they faced a lot of death threats and they had to move. Still, that's a very high figure for bad speech that had bad consequences for them. Not making light of that, still, it's a lot of money.
It is a huge amount of money, and I mean, how do you define what exactly it's worth? It's 146 million, 120 million, 80 million. All those sums of money are larger than you or I will, I think, ever have the capacity to pay. But the intention clearly was to apply punitive damages. What the precise figure for punitive is obviously open to debate. But as I understand Giuliani's claims about his own finances, if, say, 20 million had been the sum, he still couldn't pay it, as I understand it.
What do you think about that number, Jessica?
It's a huge number. I think about these two election workers being in the media so much. Rudy Giuliani is a huge public figure, right? So it's not a typical defamation case. If you were not a public figure and you said something about these two election workers, the damages probably wouldn't be so steep. But when you have the media circus that occurred around the 2020 election, all of the statements made about the election not being legitimate, those statements repeated on mainstream media, I just wonder if some of this verdict, this ultimate $146 million figure, initially 148, they kindly reduced it by $2 million for Giuliani, not making it more affordable for him. But I really think it's because this is a case with so much weight, because things played out in the media in a major way. These two election workers' lives, I'm sure, will never be the same. So it's not really a typical defamation case in that way. What do you think, Niall?
No, that's true. It's certainly atypical in a number of ways. And I think probably the disparity in power and influence of the two sides essentially plays a part in this amount of money. I mean, you have two women who, as I say, were otherwise unknown before all this kicked off. You have the former mayor of New York City turned lawyer for the then president of the United States, defaming them and really causing, as Robbie said, massive disruption to their lives. That obviously is going to elicit a big bill at the end of the day.
Yeah, he definitely defamed them. He should pay them something. North of $100 million is a lot of money, but I was not judge or jury in the case. Niall, thank you so much for joining us. More Rising right after this.